button to you. Is that one working, Bob?
Doesn't seem to be.
Huh?
Is it? No.
Here, move down here and use this one.
That one on?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let me just get it.
we're going to go ahead and get started. We have Bob Anderson with us. And Bob, I appreciate you taking the time to reschedule. Sorry we couldn't get you in last week, or was it earlier this week?
Monday. Yes, sir.
So anyway, if you would, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate your time. You have our primary request, and it is in the amount of 80 million approximately for this year. What I want to do is talk about three items that are in addition to and are really essential to the work that we do at the Department of Human Services. The first of those is actually not included in our legislative budget request because it comes in the form of a request for capital expense funding. We are in the process right now of an evaluation and assessment and recommendation review by Barry Dunn, which is an IT vendor that is evaluating all of our legacy computer systems. And I know, Senator Blackwell, you had an opportunity last year to look at what we're dealing with. We're dealing with old green screen, DOS driven, COBOL written systems that were installed in the late 80s and that are simply outdated and obsolete. We anticipate getting a full report from Barry Dunn approximately a month from now. They have been working with us since October of last year, doing this assessment, evaluation, and recommendation. And we have projected the cost of the complete replacement of our legacy systems at approximately $150 million. Now, what we are asking the legislature for is what would, for all practical purposes, be the state share. $54 million would be the state share. We will go to our federal partners, both the Administration for Children and Families at the U.S. Department of Human Services and the Office for Child Support Enforcement at the Department of Human Service, Health and Human Services, and then to the Food and Nutrition Service at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. We already have submitted to them in connection with the work that Barry Dunn is doing, what's called an advanced planning document. When we secure the funding to move forward with putting an RFP together, we will go back to our federal partners and submit what's called an implementation advanced planning document. Those federal partners understand that the federal share would be about 100 million. They've been very receptive to our interest in upgrading our systems, updating our systems, because frankly, it impacts every encounter we have with a client at the agency, whether it's a child care, child support, TANF, SNAP. All of our systems are separate. All of our eligibility systems are separate. We do not have any interoperability among all of the platforms, and we spend an inordinate amount of time and money just simply keeping them operational and maintained. As I told the joint budget, legislative budget committee earlier, we could probably eliminate 40 or more positions that are knowledge services, IT professionals that we pay on average about $120 an hour to those folks. We would eliminate about $20 million in annual costs once our updated systems were put in place. And so one of the last things I will say about the legacy system replacement project, which is, I mean, it's been my #1 priority is my number one priority for the agency at this time. It will also increase our ability to detect and to deter fraud, because obviously when we have 4 separate eligibility platforms, the possibility just for mistakes is much greater, and the possibility for detecting fraud across those systems is very limited because of the lack of interoperability. So that is the first item. The other item, which is an increase on, I'm sorry.
Yeah, let me just interrupt you if you don't mind for a few questions on this. First of all, would you introduce your staff that you brought with you?
Yes, Senator, I have to my right is Steve Stanford. Steve is our Deputy Executive Director for Economic Programs. Just behind me is Wayne Carpenter. Wayne is our Deputy Executive Director for Finance. And then to his left is Daniel Galarno, who's our Legislative Liaison, I think most of you know. And to his left is Mark Jones. Mark is our Director of our Office of Communications.
But I also understand there's some relations in this room right now.
Well, there's a relation between Mr. Stanford and the guy to your right. So
You got it. So can you tell us any stories we can use against Corbin?
I would, but he might share some as well.
It's his dad. For,
Yeah.
And Bob, for the benefit of the other committee members, would you kind of go through the process that your staff have to go through working with your current system, the time,
Yeah.
going from one screen, closing out, having to go into another,
Right.
and the potential errors as you already talked about?
Yes, sir, Senator. I liken it to this. When most of us turn on our computers in the morning, you know, we always have our email active, and we might have one other program. Maybe you're on the internet and you're looking at something on the internet. Well, the way our staff have to work, because all of these eligibility platforms are separate, they throughout the day have to open a separate tab for every single program. For METS, which is our child support program, for Mavericks, which is our SNAP program, for JAWS, which works with our TANF program, the CCPS, which is our child care payment system for childcare. All of those are open, and the average eligibility worker, if you go sit down next to one, they'll have about 8 tabs open on their desktop at one time, working in 8 different programs, because we don't have the ability when someone comes in to put in an application for SNAP benefits, the food assistance, we can take that application. But if they also want to apply for TANF, then we have to take a separate application for TANF, because what we enter into the Maverick system for SNAP doesn't translate over. It does not, it's not entered into anything related to TANF. If that person also qualifies for a child care subsidy, then we have to open a separate child care application and complete a separate child care application. And what is the most frustrating thing is the old command-driven systems, if they make an error, you know, most of us can go back and tab back and make a correction. Well, if our staff makes a mistake, they essentially have to start the application all over again. And the average application, just for a SNAP application, takes about 2 hours or 3 to complete. And then if there's a TANF and there's a child care and there's a child support application, we're talking about requiring families, and a lot of the families we deal with are single moms, to have to come back. They can't do all that in one day. They may have to come back 2 or 3 or 4 times just to complete those applications. And our staff is essentially having to multiply the work that they do 2, 3, or 4 times, because we don't have the capability to have a single application that we can take in a single setting and identify all of the services that a client family might be eligible for. That is the main reason. We could eliminate also a tremendous amount of duplicated effort if we consolidate these systems and update and modernize these systems. where one eligibility worker could take all of the information from a family for all of our programs. So that's the other part of the equation.
And I would imagine there's probably frustration on the staff of having to go through the procedures that they have to go through for enrollment. And I don't know what your retention is, but I would imagine a new system would greatly help you with retention as well, wouldn't it?
Yes, Senator. If you can imagine recent high school graduates or college graduates who are what most of the experience that most of our eligibility workers have, they come into an office they're familiar with. If they have a home computer, open a computer and using a mouse and working in that Windows-based environment, nothing that they work with at MDHS is window-based. They don't even get to use a mouse. They can't use a mouse. They have to use function keys. Remember way back, I remember I first had a computer in 1985, and you had to learn function keys to operate within a DOS-based system. Well, it's our systems are written in COBOL, so it's very similar to DOS. Yeah, it is as basic as it gets. Son. It is very basic, and we do have a real problem with retention. People will spend 3, 4, 5 months. They get fully trained with us. If they stay that long, and they just get frustrated and walk out the door. A lot of our eligibility workers walk out the door in that first month or two. We replace on average about 20% of our eligibility staff every 3 months because of the systems that they're working in and just the headaches and the restrictions, limitations on the way that they have to work. So, all of those problems that we deal with would be, I'm not saying that everything would be perfect if we have a modernized system, but we would be in the 21st century for the first time in 20 years. And it would be nice for us to have 21st century tools to do 21st century work with the families that we deal with. Other questions about the legacy replacement system that I can answer?
You just stressed me out. Not you, but the fact, I'm sorry, I was talking to Corbin, the fact that we're dealing with this.
Yes, sir.
It's just beyond me. I'm sorry. The fact that what you described about your employees coming in, this is ridiculous. I'm sorry. It's ridiculous.
I agree.
And that we continue to, but I was talking to the budget person here, Corbin, and why don't these agencies, and I know you're the messenger at this point, why don't they do it as we go on? Because it gets expensive. Why can't these agencies come in and say, you know what, we need maintenance, whatever it's called, maintenance stuff. Anyway, that's a rhetorical question, but it's ridiculous.
I agree with you, Senator. I wish somebody 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 15 years ago had been here making this request that I'm making today, because we've needed it that long.
Well, your predecessor's facing prison time. So that's probably, he was more interested in taking money out of the coffers than he was in making the agency run. So,
well, it's a fair statement that the prior administrations in this agency did not look to the needs of the agency in that regard to the systems that we're dealing with.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry.
Yes, Senator Butler.
Okay. First, I heard this presentation before, and I can appreciate the things that's going on. I guess one of my major concerns is how long will it take to install this system and be about the business of doing what we need to do to be more responsive.
Yes, sir. Senator, there are two aspects to that. One, I can't control. I wish I could. The RFP process requires us to go through ITS, and ITS on average adds about 18 months to any of these RFP processes. Now, the actual implementation, if we could start the work in July of this year, I'm told it's about a 2.5 to 3 year project at most. If I had authority July 1st to issue an RFP, the work's not going to begin before the end of this year. It might begin this time next year, but it's about a 2 or 2.5 year project, which is a whole lot quicker than, I came from Medicaid before I came to MDHS, and Medicaid is implementing a new enterprise system, working off an RFP that was issued in 2014, I believe. I don't want our experience to be that way. I want us to be able to have the RFP issued, have a vendor selected, and I'd like to be talking to you this time next year and saying we've selected a vendor and we're beginning the work. But all of that depends on how much support and assistance I can get in moving forward through the process. And I understand ITS is they're the steward of all ITS projects, and that's what they're there for. But we need to be able to sprint through this so it's not 5 years, 6 years, 7 years before we upgrade these systems. And I think my best estimate from our IT folks is from the day we begin the work and we do the design, development, and then implementation, the DDI as they call it, the total project from the start for the design, development and implementation of the new system is about a 2.5 to 3 year project. Unless, of course, we are fortunate and we find a commercial off-the-shelf product, and we've been looking at some demos. If we can adapt a commercial off-the-shelf product from IBM or from Redmayne or some other companies we've been talking to, it might be shorter than that. But we have to make sure that if we use an off-the-shelf product, that we can adapt it to all of the needs that Mississippi DHS has.
ITS can't look at your needs and recommend something that could cut back on the time.
That has not been my experience, Senator. I will say I have had good meetings with Director David Johnson, and David is, he's doing his best as the director to fulfill the role of being the proper steward, so we won't have 40 agencies that have 40 completely different systems that don't have the ability to interact with each other, and so that's part of his role. But when we begin the RFP process, we will sit down. We already sat down actually with ITS back in September to tell them we're going to be moving forward with this request. If the legislature awards us the funding, we want to move forward as quickly as we can. And ITS has agreed to, as soon as we get the recommendation report from Barry Dunn, the company that's working with us right now, they've agreed to sit down with us and begin working with us on the RFP. Yes, sir.
Thank you. And so in 2.5 years, is the technology, are we going to be outdated technology wise?
I don't think so, because I am asking our IT staff, and I've asked the folks who've been doing demos for us to install for us systems that are customizable and can be updated as we go along. We saw an IBM product just a couple of days ago. It was a product that was originally created 18 years ago, but they continuously update it, and it has new functionality every year that it didn't have last year. And I think, as executive director, that's going to be my demand to the vendor. We can't have you build something and have it obsolete once you get it built. We need something that's continuously upgradable and can continue to be modernized each year. And that will be a part of our RFP. And I know that IBM has that capability. And I won't list a bunch of other vendors, but folks that we've seen demos from, Redmayne is a company that's installing the new child care information system for CPS. They have some good products, and they are customizable, but they're modernized in the sense that they can be upgraded on an ongoing basis. So that is definitely a non-negotiable in our RFP, that it's got to be something that grows with the agency and not something that the agency outgrows.
Go ahead and continue if you would.
Yes, sir. Couple of other things that I would are additional requests. They're not in the legislative budget recommendation, but they are crucial to us at the agency. We asked for this last year, and we're asking again for funding for something called the Youth Adolescent Opportunity Program. We're asking for $8 million for community-based programs. Now, what are these? Well, these are programs that will keep youth in their homes so that we don't have to institutionalize them. And why is that important? Well, one, because every youth that's placed in institutions, detention centers, Oakley Youth Development Center, they decrease their opportunity, they decrease their chance of finishing high school by 13 to 39 percentage points once they're placed in an institution. And they increase their chances of being incarcerated in our Department of Corrections by 23 to 41 percentage points if they are institutionalized. And the community-based programs that we're looking to create, to recreate, to reestablish are things like the YMCAs, the community action agencies, the mental health regional offices, working with our youth so they can, and community-based service, so they can do, work service programs in their communities. One of the other big factors for us in terms of why we should do this, the cost to the Department of Human Services for a young person who is in community service, still at home, who's involved in our youth court system, is about $4,700 a year. If we institutionalize that young man or young woman, the cost goes up to, and when you hear this figure, you're going to be amazed. The cost goes up to $82,000 for institutionalizing a youth in our youth system. And you may wonder, well, that's a whole lot more than the Department of Corrections pays for a prisoner. It is. It's about 3 times what the Department of Corrections pays to house a prisoner. But we have to provide both a place for those youth to live, a school for them to attend, and a medical facility essentially for them to have access to medical care. And the youth that are placed in Oakley Youth Development Center costs the agency approximately $82,000 a year. Now, Georgia recently implemented about 5 years ago, they implemented statewide community services, and they were targeting a 25% reduction in out-of-home placements. The first year they achieved a 33% reduction. The second year they achieved a 34%. The fourth year they achieved a 43% reduction in out-of-home placements. Youth who were stayed at home and not put in an institution. And the fifth year that they had community-based programs, they saw a 54% reduction in the youth that were required to be institutionalized. The total number of youth who were in institutional settings went from 1,150 in 2015, fiscal year 2015, to 473 in fiscal year 2020 in Georgia. And that's a reduction of about, my guess, my estimate's a little over 550 youth per year that were not placed in institutions. And in Georgia, their estimate is that it's $90 per youth, $90,000 per youth. So they reduced the number by 500 at 90,000 piece. That's $45 million that they save in costs for their youth service in Georgia. We're asking for $8 million in order to jumpstart, essentially, to restart the youth adolescent programs across the state of Mississippi. And I'll take any questions you have about that. that program at this point.
Chairman. I think you said everything. I'm just going to comment on it. I will say, I don't know why the AOP got cut or whatever, but my experience from what I've practiced law and all that is AOP has been one of the best programs in our youth court system. And believe you me, we don't have many options. And what you're saying is what I am aware of. And if we're about funding the things that are correct and can make a difference, your request of $8 million, I think is worth doing that. But the AOP program is a very good program, and the issues that you're talking about is what we see. And so, Mr. Chairman, I know we have a whole bunch of stuff, but I would encourage us as this subcommittee to look for that 8 million to go to AOP, because it can have the effect. Well, let me put it this way. When you have social workers, you have youth court judges, you have youth court intake officers, you have attorneys who all say that a program is working, generally that means it's working. And that's a good thing. So thank you for your data on that, Mr.
Thank
Anderson.
you, Senator. And the short answer to what happened to it, 5 years ago, when we last had it, well, 6 years ago now, we were able to use TANF funding for community-based programs. Unfortunately, the feds make the rules about what we can do with TANF. And in 2016, they decided that juvenile justice programs were not permissible uses of TANF funds. So we cannot use any of our TANF funding for what we used them for 6 years ago for the adolescent opportunity program.
Honestly, that's the first explanation I've heard of that. So that's good to know. But that's something that we need to, as this body, consider that, because it's a valuable program.
Any other questions about that? And then the one last increase I will talk about, and it is some of the most precious folks that we deal with in the Department of Human Services, and that is our senior citizens. We have a department at the department, a division of aging and adult services, and it provides a wide range of programs for senior citizens and disabled adults in our state. Everything from respite care for folks who are caring for a senior citizen in their home, who can hire a caregiver to give them a break, to home delivered meals. We delivered last year over 1.5 million meals to senior citizens' homes. We used to do that in the context of congregate care centers, where they could come and get together and visit with each other and have a meal in one of those adult day centers. Because of COVID, those have been closed for the last 2 years. But we continue to deliver those meals to their homes. As we all know, if you've been listening to any of the economic news, inflation is driving up the cost of everything. We just got an estimate from our vendor who does most of our meals. The cost of those meals, the cost of the supplies to prepare those meals has gone up approximately 9% for them in the last 90 days. They've been friendly to us. They're only asking us to pick up 6.5% of that 9% increase. The other thing that's a reality is the number of senior adults who are taking advantage of these programs continues to increase every year. And we are asking the legislature, asking this committee for approximately 3.9 million additional funding. The other program we recently took back in-house was our adult protection service that is designed to investigate allegations of abuse, neglect, or financial exploitation of senior adults, vulnerable adults in their homes. More and more of our seniors are taking advantage of home and community-based services so they can stay in their home and not go to a nursing facility or an assisted living facility. But as more are at their homes, there are more cases. We look at an average of 4,000 complaints of alleged abuse or neglect or financial exploitation. And we need additional funding to fund that, as well as to fund all of the other. We provide a Medicaid assistance, a Medicare assistance program to senior adults, for example, to help them wander through that minefield of signing up for Medicare for the first time. So all of these are important services that our Division of Aging and Adult Services is just incurring additional costs. And we're asking the legislature to increase their portion of our budget by 3.9 million.
Anything else?
No, Mr. Chairman, those are the three, what I call the top three priorities that we have. And we are also asking this body, the legislature favored us with $5 million in the capital expense money that we're using for that study right now. We're asking you to renew that $5 million so we can complete that study to get ready for this legacy replacement project.
I noticed on your request, travel is increased significantly, and then you got a new category for vehicles for 160,000. What's going on there?
Yes, sir. Well, we have most of the vehicles that we have out at Oakley are frankly not serviceable anymore. And the majority of that cost, I think, is to buy new vehicles out at Oakley. Travel is increasing because our adult protective service is a large part of that. They are based in the state office, but they also work out of some regional offices, and they have to go where the allegations are and travel to investigate those allegations.
So have you not been traveling? I mean, you're looking at like 2.1 million increase.
We've not been traveling for that. We also have not been traveling for our investigative efforts for our Office of Inspector General. We expect a significant increase in that as well. We're triaging on average 3,700 fraud tips every year. And now that our investigators have full law enforcement authority, Senator Wiggins' committee shepherded that law through last year. They are on the road a good bit now, investigating allegations of fraud.
Thank you. I had one more question. You mentioned Oakley. If I'm looking into my crystal ball, not only in Mississippi, but in other states, the use of training schools like that in the juvenile justice realm seem to be fading out. And so my question, what you've talked about is expenses related to Oakley. My question to you is, are we looking at a window where Oakley will probably no longer be of service, thus different expenses being saved?
That's certainly a good possibility, Senator. I will say, as you may recall, a few years ago, because of the condition that it was in and the allegations of abuse that we had at Columbia training.
We closed Columbia.
We closed it.
And so now we've got only Oakley left.
Right. Oakley, the cost of Oakley is about a fourth of our general fund budget, maybe a fifth. It's a significant amount. And we have to staff it at certain levels. We have to have certain staffing ratios under DOJ requirements. We may be headed in that direction.
But I'm sorry, but DOJ doesn't require you to have a training school like that.
No,
do they?
no.
But if you have one, then you have requirements.
That's correct.
Okay.
And I think what will make the difference between whether we continue to operate Oakley is whether there are other alternatives available. We have been meeting with the Department of Mental Health. We've been meeting with CPS. We've been talking with other agencies about whether there are some alternative intermediate type facilities that we could look at and frankly move on from Oakley. we're going to do what we're required in terms of taking care of the youth that are committed to our custody while Oakley operates. But
I know, and I appreciate that, but I think us as stewards need to understand where the tea leaves are headed. I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's where things are headed. And so by your own admission, it's a fourth of your general fund budget in a facility that is probably not, from my experience and from what I've seen, judges are less and less likely to sentence them to Oakley for the reasons that you've talked about. And then when they do, it's the worst of the worst, who probably, to be quite honest, probably end up in the adult system. Anyway,
I would love to make the pivot to community-based youth services across this state. I certainly would like to do that.
okay.
And I think our Division of Youth Services would love to make that pivot. Oakley Oakley's over 100 years old. It was originally designed to accommodate, up to 200 youth. We have a census right now of about 35 or 40, I think.
Okay, so, and I'm sorry, so a fourth of your budget would be what, of your general funds, just off the top of your head?
Well, it's about 17 or 18 million dollars.
Okay, so for 35 kids, we're spending $17 million.
That's the reality of the cost of
I know.
running the facility.
You want a little home to take care of ourselves?
No, I don't. And look, we're not going to solve that today, but I think it's imperative that we have this discussion. And again, the worst, but $17 million is being spent on 35 children or youth.
Well,
We got limited funds. We need to look at these things.
yeah, I mean, we have, 200 staff members out there that drive a lot of that cost.
Sure, I understand.
And what percentage of them end up incarcerated?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but there is there is a share of them.
Anecdotally, more than 50%. So we're not doing anything but housing these youths, and they're going to end up in the adult system. But that goes back to your community base, but that's the bottom line. I mean, you got staff, but we have it. And so there's DOJ regulations that require certain things, and that's expensive. But I go back 35 kids, $17 million. I think $8 million to the AOP program is a much better use of the funds. And by the way, before anybody goes off and says, Senator Wiggins, oh, he's soft on children. No, I'm not. But I'm putting a financial standpoint on this.
I understand.
And that's what we need to be looking at. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good questions. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all.
Next up, we have the Department of Rehab. I guess, Mike, would you see if Chris Howard's out there?
Thank you for my indulgence.
That's right. That's 17. That's
That's what I'm talking about.
I would think we could use other resources.
100 years old.
Somebody owns it.
The state of Mississippi. And Columbia, as he said, was so bad. So Columbia was for the girls, and Oakley was for the boys, and it was so bad that they had to close down Columbia, and then they do that, and so now we're dealing with 30.
Go on, Chris, you're next.
Where shall I
Well,
sit?
you can sit over here. That's and if you would just,
There's if I cover my mouth and I walk this way.
just slide your little thing on your microphone up so you can pick you up.
Think about it, just flat out.
Yeah.
You just took that 17 million.
I think I got.
And I was gonna talk to him. That's good.
All right. Yep, 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Whatever you say, Mr. Chairman, I'll do it in 5 or 20, whichever you prefer.
Take all the time you need.
Uh-huh. All right, good deal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank
Is
you.
your microphone on too? We can hear you. Slide the little lever up on top, slide it toward you.
Okay. Testing.
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah, that way folks listening on the internet.
I got you. All right, good deal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having us out today. And it's always good to talk about the Department of Rehab Services. You know, we really do some good work and really change lives every day. So just to tell you, I've got a few people with me. I've got Andy Sallin back there in the back. He's our Director of Finance. Kevin Bishop, who is our deputy. He's over workforce. And then Anna Tucker and Christy Embry back there are over legislative relations. So they're the ones here every day handling any constituent issues y'all may have. So I brought a smaller group since we're in 210. Had we been in 216, I may have brought a few more people, but
It's all right.
I tried to keep it small. So if you look at our presentation there, and I know you guys know a lot about our agency, so I won't jump into a lot of details about the particular part of the agency, but if you look over on page 3, these are our vocational programs. And these are where we're assisting individuals with disabilities to, you know, help them overcome their disability and find great full-time employment. So looking at that number, I'm looking at that page on page 3, serving nearly 16,000 Mississippians last year, put 3,000 Mississippians back to work. If you look on that third bullet point, we always like to point this out. This is our return on investment in Spark, which is through Mississippi State University. They do a return on investment for us. And if you look at that, the ROI for the Mississippi taxpayer is 2.5. So what that means is for every dollar y'all give us, we give you back your dollar plus $1.50 once that person goes back to work. So, you know, we feel like we more than pay for ourselves and give y'all 150%, you know, return on your investment. Fourth bullet point talks about maintenance of effort. We do have an MOE requirement that requires us to spend as much state money in the second prior fiscal year as we do in the current fiscal year. So as we look at budget year 2023, the feds are going to make sure we spend at least as much state money as we did in 2021. And that number, just for y'all, is 12.8 million. So we have to have at least 12.8 million in our vocational programs to keep us out of trouble with the feds. And then a few program highlights. Project Search, you know, I love to talk about Project Search. This is a program where we are taking individuals with intellectual disabilities in their last year of high school and putting them in an internship with a host agency. We've got 13 sites this year, and because of the demand for this program, we are actually already confirmed 22 sites. So you think about that, these are individuals in their last year of school, intellectual disabilities, doing a 9-month internship at a host site. And prior to COVID, the success rate for employment was like 80–90%. So these young adults who are going through this program were actually landing full-time jobs once they got out of it. So, you know, we're excited to have 22 sites. We continue to build on that. Most of them are in hospitals. We did sign an agreement last year with Viking. So we got manufacturing, and then Keesler is going to be coming on next year as a project site. So some really cool stuff going on there. Internships. We push internships because when you talk about individuals with disabilities, you know, sometimes they may not know what they want to do. So we stress internships. And the cool thing is, you know, with our programs, we can actually pay the wages as that person goes through an internship. So it's kind of a win-win for the business where, you know, we're assisting with the wages and they're able to train someone and hopefully get a qualified person, you know, once that thing's over with. Pre-employment transition services, we are really working hard with the schools, reaching young adults who we can provide pre-employment transition services and help them get ready for employment. Last year, we served 7,100 kids, and I say kids, young adults in the schools. We hope that number is going to jump up now that more schools are opening back up. You know, I say after COVID, we're still in COVID, but schools are opening back up and we're able to get back into more schools. And then partnerships. You know, since I've been a director, we've really tried hard to create good partnerships. Now, you know, we will always do placement where an individual with a disability comes in, they want a particular job, we'll help them find that job. But when we talk about partnerships, looking at Sephora, looking at a company like Sephora, who we had at one time 130 individuals with disabilities working for Sephora. And then we've worked with Fastenal and Viking, and we're actually now currently talking with Amazon and Toyota. So really looking at those big manufacturers who, you know, hire on a large scale and really trying to change lives of the people we serve. So that's the vocational side. Over there on page 4, this is OSDP. These are special disability programs. This is where we administer waivers. We are on track to serve 3,800 Mississippians this year. These are individuals with significant disabilities. They are nursing home eligible. And by y'all allowing us to do these waivers, 3,800 Mississippians are able to live at home with their families as opposed to living in a long-term care facility. I think that's about the fifth bullet point down. Medicaid documents, it's $40,000 less expensive to serve someone through a waiver as opposed to long-term care. So if you say on any given day, we have about 3,300 individuals on the waiver. So if you say 3,300 times $40,000, that's $132 million. We're saving the Division of Medicaid by operating these two waivers, which y'all, fund for us to do. The next bullet point down, I know the waiting list has been a topic every year when we come in, and we've got that waiting list down to 510 individuals. Counselors have really done a great job working that, but to be honest,
I'm sorry,
Mhm.
I think at one point you had like 3,000 or 2,000.
is about 3 or 4 years ago, it's 3,000.
Right.
Yes, sir.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, we're really working hard, and two, because of COVID, we have individuals who may want to utilize our services, but don't want us in the house. So there probably are more, but because of COVID, they're just not reaching out to us to try to get them on one of those waiver programs. So currently the number we have on our list are 510.
Well, I'm sorry. So
Mhm.
there's an attrition though in there. Some of
There
them
is.
don't take it. So of that 510, what are we really talking about?
Usually it's about 20%. Out of the 510, some won't qualify for Medicaid. When we send the nurse and the case manager out there, they maybe their disability is too significant for them to live at home. So usually it's about, in the past, it's been about 20-25% back when the waiting list was 3,000. But you talk about attrition. Unfortunately, from July 1st to December 31st, although we've added almost 300 people, we've lost almost 300 people. So we're almost even. And it's sad to say, but when you're working with individuals with significant disabilities, and especially during COVID, this virus, we are losing individuals, as a result. So, I am proud of our case manager for adding 300 new people, but unfortunately, we lost almost 300 people as well. Looking over on page 5, this Disability Determination Services, DDS, this is where we partner with Social Security Administration to do the disability determinations. Last year, we did 65,000 cases. That's actually down. As you know, Chairman Wiggins, normally we do 80,000 plus, but it's down to 65,000 this past year. Numerous reasons. Social Security offices have been closed for face-to-face contact. So when people file, that's filed electronically. And to be quite honest with you, a lot of this federal money that's coming out to individuals, individuals aren't applying for disability because they have a steady stream of money coming in. So we think that's part of the reasons why numbers are down. We expect those to go back up. Fourth bullet point down, I hear pluses and minuses about disability. You've got some doctors that say it's a great program, some say that don't. But regardless of what you think, it does bring in $300 million per month into the state of Mississippi through disability payments. So this is a huge factor, I think, in Mississippi's economy. $300 million coming in every month through disability payments. And then the last bullet point you see there, we do have a cooperative disability investigations unit. It's called CDI. It's our office, it's Social Security office, Office of Inspector General, and also the Attorney General's office. So it's a task force that this houses Social Security office, and that's what they do every day is they look for fraud. I mean, they look on, social media, they get inquiries and things like that. So, we do have a process in place to try to catch those folks who are fraudulently receiving Social Security, and it's done through that cooperative agreement known as the CDI unit. Looking over on page 6, this is the reason y'all have me here. This is the budget. If you look at that top section, the Legislative Budget Committee recommended $30.2 million. That's up from this current year by about 93,000, and I believe that's related to the new SEC squared, or whatever you call that. But it is 30.2 million is a recommendation. We're asking for $2.3 million above that. And that's really in 3 categories. So if you look at the first one, of the 2.3 million, 395,000 of that relates to our vocational grants. So each year that grant increases at a rate of about 3% per year. But because of the state match of 21%, we would need 395,000 to draw down that additional $1.5 million to use for vocational type expenses. The second one deals with the methodology. last year when I came here, we talked about the way we charge administrative costs for the traumatic brain injury waiver was changing from where we bill it as a case management fee to how actually Medicaid bills their administrative costs, which is 50-50. This year, we have to do the same thing with the independent living waiver. That's changing. That's a CMS requirement that's changing next federal fiscal year. So the way we bill our administrative costs is actually going from, like I said, where we bill as a case management fee, pay the medical state match, is changing to now a straight 50-50 match. So because of that, we would need $1.4 million. And when I say administrative costs, this includes our case managers, our counselor assistants, our nurses. I mean, it's just not people like me sitting in Madison. I mean, this is actually the field people as well. So the administrative cost sounds a little misleading at times, but that does include our people out in the field who are actually serving directly our clients. Then the third thing down at the bottom, we are asking for $485,000. This would allow us to add 150 new individuals on the waiver. That's not a huge thing. We would love to have it, but honestly, the way we're looking with attrition, we're pretty much even. I mean, we're adding 300, we're losing 300. So we'd love to have the 485. If y'all couldn't work that out, that's not going to be a breaker for us. But the 1.4 million is our biggest concern, because that's a federal requirement where they're changing the way we bill administrative costs. So we're going to have to pay that 1.4 million regardless, whether it be out of existing funds or out of a possible increase on our budget. Flipping over to page 8, these are additional pins. Do you want me to get into these, Mr. Chairman, or are y'all interested in?
Go briefly through it.
Okay. All right. So looking over on page 8, we're asking for an additional 11 pins. The first 3 deal with our disability termination services unit, and this is what's funded 100% through Social Security Administration. The first one are auditors. We need 4 additional what we call quality assurance auditors to review the examiner's work. Our SSA liaison actually told us Mississippi is one of the lowest in ratio of evaluators to examiners. So because of that, we're asking for 4 more to review those cases and then also put us in line with the rest of the country. Benefits program manager, we have doctors and psychologists on contract. They have to sign off on every disability claim to make sure it's proper. And we need someone there to supervise that. And then C down there, we're asking for 2 trainers in the DDS unit because of turnover. We're losing a lot of people in all the programs. So it's important that we have trainers who continue to train our existing people, but also be ready to train new staff as well. D is another auditor. We're asking for an auditor on the vocational side. E, we're asking for 2 individuals, 1 to work in business development. They're the ones who go out and talk to businesses. And then we're asking for 1 for Ability Works. And those are the 15 community rehab facilities like we have in Olive Branch, Mr. Chairman, that work with individuals. We need someone to oversee that whole platform. And then F is because of the growth of Project Search, because we're expanding those sites, we really need an additional person to assist with bringing those schools and those businesses on and getting those kids ready. So looking at 9 and 10, that's just kind of like the written explanation of what we just talked about. Page 11 is just a summary. We've pretty much, the way the Legislative Budget Committee recommended, I think we're good on special funds. We're just asking for the $2.3 million of additional general funds, which would put us at $241,000. Looking over on page 12, the great thing about our budget, only 13% of our entire budget is state funding. So we get a lot of federal money, and we utilize a lot of that for direct case services. So, if you were to look at our actual expenditures, I'm not sure if you ran the tape on it or not, but it used to be about 96% of our expenditures were in salaries and subsidy loans and grants. So, we spend most all of our money on direct client services or for the people who are providing those services. We don't spend a lot percentage wise in travel, contractual, and commodities. So that's all I got, Mr. Chairman.
Just from looking at your budget request, this must be post-COVID reality, I guess, but your travel is up significantly.
Yeah.
As well. Have you not been traveling during COVID?
Yeah, because our counselors, go out and visit clients. Our case managers on the waivers are required to do monthly contacts and quarterly visits. But because of COVID, we were doing those electronically. So yes, sir, the additional money we're requesting in the travel category would be for those folks to get back out and do their travel.
Senator Wiggins? Anything? All right. Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank y'all very much. Thank you for your support.
And Senator Wiggins, motions rise and report.
Rise and report.
Good deal. Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah, we've kind of been doing it in different areas. So we kind of try to spread it out. The great thing about Mississippi is we've got a long hunting season, but unfortunately we do see a lot of accidents. So we thought that was important to do those radio spots.
Have you around? Been all right?
I'm good.
Good.
I told him I had officially moved out.
With DHS,
Maybe.
I was Butler director of human services back in the mid-80s. And I remember they put in the Maverick system, the big client system. I
One time. we came
remember I had a lot to do with that. And it was like 30 something years
Everything been
ago.
okay?
They're still using it.
Going on the straight and narrow.
Yeah.
Right. Well, if you need anything from us, you let us know.
I sure will. Yes,
Yeah.
I will.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.
The thing is, people don't even, there's no one left. Everyone's retired and died and used to do COBOL and Fortran and all those old languages.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Bob that.